Hello everyone, hope you are all doing good. Today we are going to learn about endpoints concept under VPC feature. When you go to VPC and you will see endpoints under private endpoint connection. Private link and lattice. What these endpoints are? We have two types of endpoints, gateway endpoint and also the internet interface endpoint. Imagine you have an EC2 machine running in your private subnet that needs to connect to S3 to download some files. Without VPC endpoint, we have two options, that is NAT gateway that again cost money and route through a network, internet, or you have to keep your server in public subnet so that IZW or internet gateway can help to connect to S3 bucket to download the files. What is S3 bucket? It is actually having a public endpoint of AWS service, and it will help you to store objects, any kind of non-structured objects that you can store in S3 bucket. We have some services in AWS that those are not part of your virtual private cloud. Those are outside of your virtual private cloud, and they have public endpoints available too to connect. These kind of services required endpoints to connect to your server securely. S3 and DynamoDB are two AWS services that require a gateway endpoint. Those are free to use. And there are some other AWS services like EC2 API, SNS, SQS. These are messaging services. These required interface endpoint to connect to your machine securely. These will include small hourly cost, but gateway endpoints are free to use. Let us see how this endpoint will help us to connect from your machine to S3 bucket securely. First, let's discuss a gateway endpoint. As we already know, we cannot connect to our private servers directly, right? So I have two virtual machines already running from the previous session. One is in a private network and one is in the public network. Private network one is unable to connect to the S3 endpoint, and the public one is able to connect to the S3 endpoint via internet gateway. Now we have to establish a connection from private server to our S3 bucket. How to create an S3 bucket? It is very easy. Just search on the global search for S3 bucket and click on create bucket. There will be many options available, but for now you just choose a general purpose and give the bucket name and just click on create bucket. We will see later in-depth options when we discuss S3 buckets. We have one S3 bucket created, and one more thing you required is these virtual machines will have a permission to connect to S3 bucket via permission first. That will be created via IAM role. Just go to the global search and Just go to the global search and search for IAM. And under IAM, just select roles. We can create our custom roles here. I have created a custom role with S3 bucket access, EC2 session manager role. That is the name of my custom role, and what access it contains: DynamoDB access, S3 bucket access, EC2 read-only access, SSM session manager access. These four access this role is having access to. If you want to create a custom role, just go to create a role and select AWS service and trusted service as EC2. Click next. What and all permissions that you require, select those explicit policies and click next. Give a custom name to your role and description for your readability and create a role. That is all. That is how I have created this EC2 session manager role. Once you have created this role, go to your virtual servers in your cloud, VPC. Attach this role. Select a server, click on Actions, Security under IAM role, modify the IAM role. You can attach the newly created role EC2 Session Manager, update IAM role. Even you can do this IAM role while creating the server itself, because I have already created this server, so I'm doing it right now. Once you attach your role, this doesn't mean that your server is able to connect to your S3 bucket directly. Let us test that now. Copy the public IP of your EC2 instance and use EC2-user as a username at the public IP address of your server, and use a PPK file and try to connect to your server. I've connected to my public server. Yeah, because of that role, it is able to list the servers, but whenever you try to upload something here, it will not be able to do that. Let me try to upload something. S3 copy. Let me check what and all files that I have. Oh, I'm sorry. This is a public server. You will be able to connect to S3 service directly, but from your private server, you will not be able to connect. Let me connect to my private server. ssh-i key.pem. I need a private IP address of my server. 1059.363. 1059.363. Okay. See, As you are seeing, when I try to list S3 buckets here in my private server, I am unable to list those because I don't have an add gateway route, and this server is unable to connect to S3 service, which is hosted as a public AWS service. Okay, now let us see how we can establish the connection. In a global search, search for endpoints, or if you go to your VPC, you will have an option called endpoints. Select that. Just click on create endpoint. Let me call it as my S3 endpoint. And under the services, select S3, and this is gateway type that we are testing right now, so select gateway, and which VPC that your machine is residing, select that one, and select your private routing table. That is all you have to fill. Create endpoint. Once you have an endpoint created, what is gonna happen? If you go to your route table, the private route table, it will go and create a route for your endpoint service. It is taking little time. So you have a route created here. Let us try to test now. So now you are able to list your AWS S3 bucket, right? So let me try to copy something here. S3 CP, and I have to get the endpoint of my S3 bucket, that is S3 double slash and the name of your S3 bucket. If you don't know, you can just go to your bucket, it will show the endpoint there. Okay, it is not showing now. However, you can see somewhere this endpoint details. Just copy your bucket name, S3 double colon. First you need some file here, right, to copy. I will call it as S3 test testing file. Enter. Yes, I have one file created, S3 file. Let me try to copy this file to our S3 bucket. Okay, there is a command error. Oh, okay. I forgot to give AWS S3 copy. That file has been uploaded successfully. Let us go and test in our bucket. Refresh. Yeah, now you can see the S3 test file is available in this bucket, right? Yeah, that is how you can establish a connection from your private server to Amazon public services by using endpoints. We also have an interface endpoint available. Similar way how we have created a gateway endpoint, we also have interface endpoint available that is for specific services, that is for EC2 API, SNS, SQS and Lambda. Let me go ahead and show you the demo for that as well. For example, if you want to list EC2 instances in JSON format, you have to call EC2 API. So with the EC2, if you type a command AWS EC2 describe instances, the AWS CLI will go and connect to EC2 API and it will give you a JSON output. This EC2 API is again a public AWS service. In order to connect to that, you required a interface endpoint. I already have one interface endpoint created. Just go to your VPC and go to endpoints. Let's see how we can create an interface endpoint. Just give a name, some random name, and AWS services, and search for EC2. The service you are looking is EC2, and this only have type interface available. Select your VPC and private network. The private subnet where your server is available, which server that you want to connect this EC2, and select the required security group and create an endpoint. That's all you have to do. I already have this interface endpoint created. For this demo purpose, let me do it once again. EC2 interface endpoint. select VPC, and you have to select your network settings, project VPC. Security group, create an endpoint, select the subnet. Somewhere I missed to select the subnet. This interface endpoint will take 1 or 2 minutes time, but gateway endpoint will create within seconds. Just wait for some time and go to route table, your private route table, and just observe the routes. It will automatically create a route for your interface endpoint. As I said, that will take some time. Once you have route available, you can do AWS EC2 describe instances and give a region name. I am in East US 1, I guess. US East 1. Yeah, now you're able to list your EC2 instances. Without that endpoint, you will not be able to connect to this service from your private server. That's all for this session. I hope you understand the endpoint concept. Thank you for watching.